Hello, my name is Caleb. The question prompt for today was if nonverbal communication or if verbal communication was more important to you, or if the course material says that nonverbal communication is more important. So it's do you agree or not? First of all, when I compare the two, verbal communication and nonverbal communication, it's hard to determine which of the two is more important because they both, in part, bring something unique to the table. Something unique and something I think would be equal, and I think they would be considered equally important. They work, or you would think would be considered equally important. They work in tandem with each other, so when you're attempting to communicate a clear message, you really need both. I mean, think of a moment when you're communicating with words and nothing else. What if you're trying to communicate with someone that you would like to have a more intimate relationship with, but you're talking to them while standing 10 feet away from them? It's not going to be very clear what you're trying to communicate. What if you're trying to convince a judge or a jury or just anyone of anything, but you appear stiff and can really not, or are really avoiding eye contact? Can't make eye contact with anyone that you're trying to convince. When you realize that you cannot effectively use one without the other, it makes it really hard to decide if one is even more important than the other. Ultimately, I have come to the conclusion that if I had to choose one to be more important than the other, I would probably choose nonverbal communication like the course material says. Just because the umbrella of concepts that nonverbal communication covers just happens to be much broader. We learn from our reading and from the videos that we watched that it covers territoriality, artifacts, chronemics, proxemics, haptics, and eye contact, which is a very broad range of things. Although one thing about nonverbal communication, though, that I'd just like to add is that it is much less direct than verbal communication. One kind of key characteristic of nonverbal communication is that it tends to be very vague and ambiguous, according to our course material. But with verbal communication, you can be very specific and precise. You can get, you can say exactly what you're feeling. You can communicate with clarity, which is why I think that verbal communication is key to having clear communication. So kind of in conclusion, I don't think that if you want to communicate effectively, you can't have one without the other. I would say just like getting into like the technicalities of all of it, that nonverbal communication maybe is slightly more helpful. Maybe you can be a little more clear if you only had nonverbal communication versus if you only had verbal. But really, I think the takeaway from all of this is that they're both super important, and that they're both necessary to communicate effectively with others. Thank you.